right, now we are quickly going to look at Michelangelo Caravaggio. I'm sure I'm probably mispronouncing it a little bit, but we'll do the best we can. And the date of creation on this piece is 1602, so this is well into the heart of the Reformation, which, as we described before, is roughly 1517 to 1644, and it's a beautiful part of the Baroque period. Next to Rembrandt, personally, Caravaggio is my favorite artist, and without doubt, I think the best, perhaps in history, of controlling light and shadowing. And definitely encourage you to look at some of his other artworks. They have them in very high resolution online, so they're quite easy to find. And the name obviously gives away that he was obviously an Italian painter, and he was active in Rome for most of his artistic life. His paintings combined a realistic observation of the human state, both physical and emotional, with the dramatic use of lighting, which had a formative influence on Baroque painting overall. Caravaggio's innovations inspired Baroque painting, but the Baroque incorporated the drama of his own creating without the psychological realism. The style itself evolved and fashions changed, and Caravaggio fell out of favor. But in the 20th century, especially, interest in his work revived, and his importance to the development of Western art was reevaluated to where now such art historians as André Geoffroy has stated, what begins in the work of Caravaggio is quite simply modern painting. And when looking at this piece, The Taking of Christ, you'll notice there are 7 figures in the painting. From left to right, they are John, Jesus, Judas, 3 soldiers, the one farthest to the right, barely visible in the rear, you can see, and a man holding a lantern to the scene. They are standing, and the only upper 3/4 of their bodies are depicted. Judas has just kissed Jesus to identify him for the soldiers. The figures are arrayed before a very dark background in which the setting is obscured. The main light source is not evident in the painting, but comes from the upper left. The lesser light source is the lantern, held by the man on the right, believed to be a self-portrait of Caravaggio, also presumably representing St. Peter, who would first betray Jesus by denying him, and then go on to bring the light of Christ in the world. At the far left, man, St. John, is fleeing. His arms are raised, his mouth is open in a gasp. His cloak is flying and being snatched back by a soldier. The flight of the terrified John contrasts with the entrance of the artist. Scholars claim that Caravaggio was making the point that even a sinner, 1,000 years after the resurrection, has a better understanding of Christ than does his friend. 2 of the more puzzling details of this painting are, 1, the fact that the heads of Jesus and St. John seem to visually meld together in the upper left corner, and 2, the fact of the prominent presence in the very center of the canvas and in the foremost plane of the picture of the arresting officer's highly polished metal-clad arm. Regarding the detail of the polished metal arm of the soldiers in the center of the picture, art historians have suggested that it was meant by the artist to serve as a mirror of self-reflection and examination of conscience. As do many spiritual writers and preachers of the period, the artist may be inviting his viewers to see themselves reflected in the behavior of Judas's through their own daily acts of betrayal of Jesus, that is, through their sin. Now let's very quickly keep in mind that Baroque period Caravaggio, and fast forward to another modern piece. This one, sticking with the Andy Warhol theme, on the top, you'll see just a list of punching bags. Again, you can Google these. We'll also try to have them listed for an easy link to click on. And on the bottom, we're not going to go through this one, but it is interesting. It's titled Stations of the Cross, even though it looks like just lines on canvas. But sticking with the Andy Warhol theme, a person might be thinking, okay, punching bags, Jesus, and they have some titles like Punch Me. You know, is it mockery? Is it avarice? You know, exactly what is going on there. But again, if you peel back the layers, what we're seeing is Warhol is saying, punch me, as far as Christ on the punching bag. And I think that, simply put, the punching bags were a piece put together by Warhol and Jean Basquiat, a young artist in the 80s, showing Christ on a variety of punching bags, inviting you to punch me. Let out your frustration, your hate, your anger on me. We live in a fallen world, and Christ has taken the punishment meant for us upon himself, as Warhol poetically gives us an interactive example of through this art piece. With that in mind, Passover and Easter both should have special revelation this Lenten season specifically. May we take solace in Christ, as many of us are full of fear and confusion with the coronavirus knocking on all of our doors, it seems, but put Christ on our doorpost and in our hearts during this time and look toward the sunrise we find within Easter and the resurrection.